This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
And you can tell me if I'm being too verbose, but I'll call to order this meeting of the Easthampton Rent Study Committee on December 9th, 2025. First up on the agenda is public speak. Is anyone here from the public or online to speak to any item that's not on our agenda? And hi, Kevin. Thanks for making it. I see you're online.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for sending along the invites. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. So I do not see anyone here for public speak, so I think we can move on to our first real agenda item, which is approval of the prior meeting minutes. So I did attempt to send these around ahead of time. I know that I messed up and sent them to you at the last minute, so it's fine if you want to abstain, but did everyone else have a chance to review? Any questions?
I was not here, so I should abstain. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I move to recommend to approve.
All right. Can I get a second? Yep. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Any
will also
opposed?
abstain because I was not there.
Okay, so we have 3 abstentions. Or
Sorry, who's
two,
the third
two,
abstention?
2 abstentions.
I'll take notes for today.
Thank you, thank you. Oh yeah, that was something that I wanted to mention. Donna wanted to clarify that she did not sign up necessarily to be clerk or note taker, but she still wants to be vice chair. So if I am not able to fulfill this role, she will take on facilitating the meetings. But we still need to figure out, and I figure we'll put this on the agenda for next meeting, who would be the regular note taker, and we could, pass that around if we want, or anything like that. But I just wanted to clarify that now. And next up on our agenda is a presentation on the state of housing in Easthampton and an exploration of the Boston Home Rule Petition model. So I spent a little while compiling the presentation on the screen. I know it is a little small. Maybe I'll turn off closed captions. Or does it let me set them?
I think you just maybe click on it again. If you click on the bottom.
Well, I'm wondering if it'll let me make it less big, but I don't think so.
I don't know.
All right, whatever.
Or if you click on that little arrow in the bottom right-hand corner, does that expand it?
Right where?
Yeah, right.
This? Oh, I think this is.
Oh, exit. Sorry, never mind.
All right, so I spent a little while compiling some census data, as well as, I had already done a lot of this compiling, but I also went through all the materials from Boston again, just to make sure that I had everything accurate, just to lay out very high level overview. And I could probably turn this into 3 presentations where we could really dive in deep on the details of everything, and we have the resources to do that, but I think that that's sort of going to be more the work of this committee moving forward. So I just wanted to keep it high level, and then we can revisit the conversation about the subcommittees after. So just to get us started, I included some just basic demographic statistics showing the population over time. You can see that our population for the past almost 30 years has kind of leveled out at 16,000. And over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been very slowly declining. Looking at the age distribution, the dotted line is the census estimates from 1990, and then the solid red line is from 2020. So you can sort of see the large hump in the 1990 numbers has sort of moved to the right over those 30 years, but there has not been another hump to replace it. So we have a very upside down population pyramid, or you can sort of see, visualize this as the silver tsunami that our community is facing.
Ouch. Okay.
No,
Anyway, keep going.
The Aging on Council has a study that mirrors that.
Yeah. So this, and I want to thank the Mass Housing Partnership people for putting data down together, which I pulled this compilation of census data from. The rest of it I did my own analysis on, but this is sort of a pretty version of some of the data that we're going to go through in the next couple slides that just shows out of the 7,924 total households and 16,000 population, 40% of those households are renters, around 3,179. 43% of those renter households are considered cost burdened, so spending more than 50% or more than 30% of their income on housing, including utilities. And then you can see the median rents by number of bedrooms, and then the total combined median rent at the bottom. So right now, around $11.92 across all bedroom sizes. Sorry.
Is that given the most recent increase in rents that we're seeing? Is that reflected in that number?
So these are sort of they're estimates from the Census Bureau ACS. So they're taking a 5-year rolling average of the 5 years leading up to 2023, so 2019 to 2023. And you can see here you have those error bars that sort of show what they consider the margin of error. And it gets pretty big when you're looking at a small geography like Easthampton, because they don't have a huge sample size. So it definitely isn't capturing some of that more recent stuff. And if we wanted to, we could look into more proprietary data, like buying data from Zillow or Redfin or something like that, if we wanted a more detailed study of our rental market, which I suggest a little bit later on as something that this committee could request or work on.
Great.
But you can see in the graphic on the right here, between 2018 and 2023, we've seen a market increase that is statistically significant because those error bars do not overlap at all. So this is, it's increasing over time. I don't have that same increase for the per bedroom, but you can just sort of assume that they're all getting more expensive over time.
So I'm sorry, are the error bars the black lines that are vertical?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is the median gross rent image on the right, is that for just all rentals?
Yeah. Yeah. So that 1192 number on the right is the same as that 1192 number on the left at the right or in the middle. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, sorry. I have bad eyesight, so it's
Yeah,
hard for me to see the numbers.
All
right,
It's the one in the middle. And out of our 8,485 total housing units, and we know that a lot of those, out of those occupied units, so the blue part of the donut on the left, a lot of those are homeowners. About 60% of those are homeowners actually. But out of that small red sliver, the 561 units that the census estimates are vacant in Easthampton, about 260 of those, or 46%, were considered vacant for rent, so on the market. And the others are considered other vacant and seasonal, recreational, or occasional use. So, that's roughly 260 units that, and the margin of error on this is again really high. So it's, it could be a lot less, it could be a lot more. And then the other vacant shows units that, we've heard anecdotally people intentionally just not renting out a unit that they know that they could because they don't want to be landlords, or again, margins of error are pretty high, but that makes up another 285 units and then 16 units for seasonal use. And that would also, I think, capture some of that short-term rental stuff. And again, 16, I think, is a low number, but it's what their rolling estimate is for those 5 years.
So just so I'm clear, sorry.
Yep.
Of all the rental units, half of them are vacant, not being used. Just want to make sure I'm seeing that.
Out of all the vacant units, half of them are being kept vacant deliberately.
Yes, okay.
According to census and this is an estimate with a high margin of error, but this is the best data that we have on our housing market. So
Do you comparable to other places? Do you know, are these weird numbers? Are they? Anecdotally, it feels like people can't even find places to live in Easthampton. And that would kind of seem to be borne out by these numbers, that there's not very many.
yeah, I would
places available.
say, and again, I forgot to give this whole preamble, but like I'm not speaking for the Donahue Institute, but in the Donahue Institute recent study, Western Mass Housing Study, we did look at Hampshire County and Hampden County as a whole. And these numbers are within like yeah, they're somewhat typical,
yeah.
in that like it's surprising that we have as high of a rental vacancy rate as we do. But you know, now knowing what we know, we can sort of cut that in half, which is under what's considered healthy, which is around 5%. But the census data on this is a little bit messy, and you know, again, we could use better data collection, which again could be a task that this committee does.
Well, I guess on that note, and I'm just gonna put this thought out here now, but it's probably a thought for like later. I am really curious about the other vacant, because that's more, I mean, that's like such a huge number comparatively speaking. And I know anecdotally, even on my own street, I know people who deliberately keep their units empty for various reasons. But I do think that might be something for us to maybe dig into further, because perhaps there could be like a campaign in the future, for example, encouraging people to get their units online, because that seems to be such a tangible way to address, hey, we don't have enough rental units. Let's get some more available. Do you know what I mean? And so I am curious, just again, like, I would be really curious to dig into further to know more specifically why those 285 units are offline.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say the same thing. What, is there a way for us to do some research to maybe actually find out some of those things and actually be willing to like reach out to them and like, can you help us understand like?
Well, because like I know like on my street, there's, I want to say at least 2 duplexes that are being kept vacant. And I believe that at least for one of them, it's because they don't want to put the investment in to bring it up to like livability essentially. I actually haven't been inside, so I don't know if it's something that is just more of a like, it could be rented, but they just don't want to paint it, or if it's needs like more work. But that's just my sort of initial experience with encountering this. But I am curious, like if there's other reasons. I know, I imagine that like 16 number and the 285 probably have some overlap with some of the short-term rentals that we were just talking about earlier with that 43 number. So I imagine the 16 and the, you know, some of that overlaps in there, but obviously that's just such a small sliver of the 285 pie, so.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. You know, we were just talking briefly about the short-term rental stuff like this, not to throw a wrench in it, but this does sort of complicate that when you're talking about short-term rentals taking away from long-term rentals, because some of those short-term rentals might be coming from that blue part of the pie and not from ones that are otherwise on the market.
Is there, also, could it be a part of incorrect reporting? Yeah, I imagine the census, some of this is, you know, on the honor system, sometimes people don't want to report that they have a rental unit.
Yeah, that is totally possible as well. And I also will add that some of this can be units that are not habitable or aren't like, don't have their certificate of occupancy or something like that.
Would that include things like, I know down on East Street towards the end, there was like that house that had a fire a couple years ago. And like even in New City, there's been a few, like 1 or 2 houses that are just totally vacant because they're just being, I don't know if it's insurance or whatever. Like, do you think that's included in this other vacant number?
I mean, I would imagine that would be sort of captured in their broad estimates, but like this is, and the method for the American Community Survey is there's probably like 10 maybe actual households in Easthampton that got a survey, and then those are weighted based on a number of different demographic factors that we know based on the census, which is we're getting everyone's information, so we can sort of weight those households based on similar characteristics with other households in the community. So a lot of these are broader estimates that have that like margin of error that's like greater than 20% of the actual number. So and you know, like I said, this is the best data that we have, so it's important to look at, but we shouldn't put too much purchase in terms of like it capturing individual data points.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, thank you.
So out of those renter households, I mentioned 40%, a little over 40% are considered cost burdened. So the renters are at the top bar of this graph. The orange is considered paying greater than 30% of their income. And then the red overlap is households out of that are paying 10% or 50% of their income or more. So you can see there's a huge amount of renters and homeowners. In fact, homeowners with a mortgage make up the largest group of people that are severely cost burdened. But this is just, again, a very persistent statistic that shows we have high rates of cost burden in Easthampton. This has been the case the last few census years for, I'm sure, decades.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty similar.
Yeah. It's interesting how in Hampshire County, there has been a decrease in renter cost burden, just the 30% number. And it's unclear about whether that's because of higher incomes, people moving here and boosting the median income, or if rent growth is slower in Hampshire County than in like Camden County or Franklin County. But again, that's something that needs to be investigated more.
Can I ask a quick question about the bottom bar, the homeowners?
Sure.
Does that indicate people who outright own their homes? And then in that case, then what is the cost burden referring to? Like, is that like utilities or
Mhm.
taxes?
Taxes,
Okay.
utilities. Yeah.
I know we've been talking about short-term rental, but I think that speaks to the middle bar,
Yeah.
homeowners with mortgages, why people are looking to short-term rental to alleviate some of that burden.
And speaking of incomes, this shows sort of the median household income of homeowner households versus renter households, and then versus the combined median. So you can definitely see there's an economic disparity of, almost $40,000. So I just think that that's important to think about when we're talking about what households are impacted by rent increases and just the overall tight rental market in the city. And then if breaking down households by race and ethnicity, you can see in general, we have a very white community, but renters are more like, or there's a higher percentage of Hispanic or and Latino house or head of households and Black or African American head of households in renter households than owner households. So again, it's pretty slight, but there is a disparity there in terms of race and ethnicity. So these impacts are not necessarily being felt equally across the different populations in Easthampton. And we also know the stories of large landlords and investment firms raising rents aggressively. Pleasant View, the Adams Street tenants, Pine Valley, a number of other individual instances. And then now that has precipitated the Easthampton Tenants Union, which is an active group meeting regularly, and they're starting to do really impressive work. And it seems like a group that's growing quickly. So that's sort of this data that I have on the rental market in Easthampton. I'm ready to move on, but I wanted to pause to ask or if there are any questions or things I can clarify more. All right. So the next thing that I wanted to dig into was a high-level overview of the 2022 Boston Rent Control Home Rule petition process, just to highlight how I think it makes a really good model for the work that we could do moving forward in Easthampton. To give a little bit of background just on what rent control stabilization is, it's limiting the amount or percentage of rent that can be raised at any one time. There are often exemptions for small buildings or new construction. And then units are decontrolled under certain conditions. So when a tenant leaves or after a certain time period, usually there's the ability to raise rents again. Since 1994, it's been banned for municipalities at the state level. We have a history of communities in Massachusetts with a rent control policy, usually or almost exclusively on the eastern side of the state. And recently, there have been communities that have been trying to appeal that multiple times in Boston, in Somerville, Cambridge. Right now, there's currently a bill that would lift the statewide ban before the state legislature. There's also a ballot measure that would set a statewide 5% rent cap, increase cap. And then there have also been municipalities, most recently in 2022 with Boston, and hopefully with the work that we're doing, requesting home rule authority to implement this as well. So it's been a sort of parallel action across multiple different policy domains. So this is just a rundown of the key policy parameters or the pillars as described by the Boston team. So that involves the questions of what is the limit to rent increases, how are they set, when do units become decontrolled, when can expenses be passed on to tenants, as in exemptions to the rent cap. So if there are renovations made, if utility rates increase, if property tax rates increase, how can that be passed on, and what is the fair breakdown of that? What sorts of housing stock is exempt? So what types of buildings, new construction, smaller buildings, owner occupied, and then administration. So how will they be enforced? Is there anything the city's doing in terms of information and education to tenants and landlords? And just, yeah, overall administration. And out of all of these, in the Boston process, they had consultants and people from the city give case studies and do a lot of research and present it to the committee. And all of those are available for us to look at as well. And we can also do a little bit more research if we'd want. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about any of these things? Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question about the exemptions. So like, let's say we had for Boston, whatever, has new construction. Is that exempt forever, or is there a period of time after which it's not considered new construction anymore and then it would fall under a rent control process?
So the Boston policy that they created in 2022, I think exempted new construction for 15 years. And then after that, it became controlled.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Just administration. Because this seems to be going, the city is doing it or municipalities, the administration would be within the city of Easthampton, not a statewide entity or a.
Likely, yeah.
Likely. Okay.
Yeah, but the that would just be hammering out things like, is there gonna be a rent board? Is there gonna be, who is in charge of enforcing it? What city department has the tools to make these inquiries? And
Right, it could go to an existing or something might need to be created.
yeah. Sorry.
No, I'll say it. Please go ahead.
So this is an overview of the process in Boston. So in March of 2022, not 2023. So in March of 2022, Mayor Michelle Wu formed a rent stabilization advisory committee. The purpose was to study the housing market, learn about policies in other communities, and provide recommendations on a local policy for a home rule petition. So very similar to, I think, what we've done just through city council. So I would say that we're probably past that first step if we're making a parallel metaphor. But home rule petition specifically allows municipalities to request special permission to override state law or create additional regulations that are more strict than what state law would normally allow. Throughout this process, they met 6 times over the course of over a year. And they had 5 public listening sessions focused on different types of community stakeholders. So they had a general meeting, they had 2 meetings for tenants, they had a meeting for property owners, and a meeting for labor and workforce stakeholders, and did the work to sort of compile all of that input and include it in their final recommendations. And here is a visual of sort of what that timeline looked like. And you can see on the bottom here, there's a link to their website that still has all of that amazing information, but I've downloaded all those resources and they're available on the drive as well. So yeah, you can see they did those 5 listening sessions over the course of that summer, and really tried to spread out and give a lot of opportunities for public comment. All of those listening session comment summaries are available in our Google Drive. So I linked that in here and I'm going to send these slides around, but you can see up there, it's under Rent Study Committee. And then if you look at the folder Resources on Boston Rent Control Home Rule Petition, Community Listening Sessions, and then Comment Summaries. So it's sort of nested within a few folders, but I'm a little bit OCD with folder management, so like just
I
bear
went
with
in
me.
there, it seems very tidy to me.
Great,
I found
great.
one, I looked at one.
Okay, great. That's how I do my own folder management. So like you can, if you can't find anything, just ask me. I know where it
It's a
is.
tidy folder.
Yeah, overall, the comments, as you'd expect, were comments and concerns on the different capping of rent increases and choosing the cap, what sort of exemptions made sense, how the apartments would be dropped off of the control, and different concerns around how it would be administered. And there was also support for administrative or alternative and companion policies and administrative efforts to sort of make sure that it was successful. There was a lot of comments that, we don't need rent control, we just need to build more housing. And, a lot of the response was, well, we need both, and like we should tie them together. So that's just something to be aware of. And, while digging through it, if there's anything that sort of stands out to you that I didn't include here, I'd love to hear what was interesting.
I just have a question on decontrol, but it might be premature. So, because I only know about it from the slides. So if a unit becomes decontrolled, is it decontrolled forever, or when a new tenant comes in, it starts a new level of control?
I think that's what it is. You can relist it at market rate, and then when you get a tenant, it's then now set at those increase.
I understand, okay.
But I think, I'll say that I'm just saying that, but I'm sure that there's more detail there.
Well, I just, in general, I just wanted, because I know that if we talk about it, we're gonna get into it. I'll wait for that.
Don't wait.
Well, I don't wanna,
No, I
So in their August meeting, after compiling all of the feedback, the Rent Stabilization Advisory Committee from Boston voted on the parameters for the draft legislation. They decided on rent increases tied to the CPI plus 6%, the cap of 10% per year, whichever was lower. It exempted certain housing units built in the last 15 years and some owner-occupied smaller properties. So think live-in duplexes, that kind of thing. The final policy was presented at the January 17th committee meeting and then presented to the Boston City Council in February, and it was then approved at that March 8th City Council meeting in an 11-2 vote. It was then delivered to the state legislature and died in timed out in committee.
Now, I have to ask, what makes, it's a two-part question. If Mayor Wu in Boston submitted something that died, what makes you think Easthampton?
Well,
No,
that's a great segue, actually.
I have a lot of
That's
respect for
exactly
Omar.
the
I have a lot of
question.
respect for Omar, but.
Easthampton's no Boston.
No,
I don't
no,
know.
but I have a lot of respect for Omar, but Hadley and South Hadley will not go for this, and he represents 3 communities. So what makes you think, I don't want to sound negative, because you should always try something if you believe in it, but what makes you think you have a little bit of chance of success
Well,
with the black hole of the Mass Legislature?
yeah, no, that's literally like the thing
We just
for,
got dark here.
it's the question for the next slide, actually. It's like state
Can I ask
approval.
a clarifying question before we get,
Sure.
can they refile it? Like, so if it goes to, like, so could Boston refile it at a new session for the legislature to hear it? Or it's just like dead forever?
I think they could. I don't
I think
And
the
then the
know.
next
council would have to
session,
Yeah,
Like whenever it was like a 2-year session or something, so they could have refiled it?
yeah.
Because
I
lots
mean,
of
that's a
things
good
die
question.
lots
Yeah.
of things get filed and die, and then you
So many things.
Resurrect.
So
you
many
could
things.
refile it. So I just was curious if you do, like, I guess it depends, like, I think it's a 2-year cycle, so maybe the second, maybe it's not, hasn't come up again.
I'm assuming you
Yeah.
need reapproval of city council.
Maybe,
Which
to, like,
but
restart
still, that wouldn't be
So
so hard.
if city council dramatically changed in 2 years, maybe
Yeah.
it would be hard.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Well, and I mentioned in later slides that I think it would be a really good idea to bring in 1 or 2 or 3 members of that Boston committee to like speak to us and maybe answer some questions that we have. I've already had 2 of them accept my LinkedIn connection request and like say that they'd be happy to connect in the new year. So I definitely think that will be a good next step to answer some of those process questions. But
I think when we were initially talking about this as a group, right, like, is Easthampton the little city that could? Maybe. We got, it's not
Ranked
voting.
choice voting.
Ranked choice voting. But I think it was, what are the ways that we can demonstrate that we as a city are trying to address this particular issue? And then if Boston did this and little Easthampton did this and other cities did this, then at the legislative level, right, they might be like, all right, we really need to like get something in place.
The more cities like us are trying this, the more they're hearing.
Right.
This
That's
is
the way it kind of goes in Massachusetts.
Right,
It
exactly.
doesn't start with the state, it's
Yeah.
community by community.
You know, like not for nothing, Easthampton and Somerville were the 2 cities that sued the government out of Massachusetts. So
Sued who?
Easthampton and Somerville were the 2 cities that sued the government for the schools. I think.
Yeah, the
Oh,
Department of
oh,
Education.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like we are tiny, but we aren't like
Mighty.
Yeah.
we are mighty.
No, and
But I hear your point. I agree
Well,
with
no,
your
no,
point
the
completely.
one reason why I asked that though is if, and I accept everything that was in response to it, is like, you know, I built my first building in 1987, and it's been an uphill battle from 1987 to get more units, to get more density in Easthampton. This problem didn't occur just because of COVID.
Mhm.
COVID spiked it, for sure. Remote work and all these other things definitely brought it, what was coming just brought it to the forefront.
Mhm.
So I'd like to see at the same time, if the little city could, you know, address NIMBY and housing regulations. And, you know, in Easthampton, we have an example where in 1996, we downzoned, I think that's the right term, where we changed R10 to R5 in one part of town. And we actually had we had one house torn down and was replaced by 3 houses. But that was repealed basically because there was a mob in front of city council. And I like to see that, you know, be revisited because, you know, and then the other thing too that I get concerns me is this is also a result of Northampton's policies. Northampton is known for being housing friendly, but they're not. Even Claire Higgins was not housing friendly. And then we have you.
Stop recording. Just kidding.
And then we
I don't think
have-
she's watching.
Then we have UMass.
Ugh.
UMass is expanding dramatically. They have a developer in their pocket who's building units. Well, 2 of them just burnt down, but they're not addressing, and it's, you know, and I see it coming this way.
Mhm.
So if it's a little city that could, then I guess the little city could also look at a couple other avenues, because the toolbox needs more than one tool.
Yeah, no, and
Agreed.
I definitely appreciate that. And like, I 100% on the zoning piece, like that is what is like the reason why I really wanted to address some of those zoning things in the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, and a lot of those like combining and upzoning a lot of R10 and
Yeah.
like R5 and R10. All of that is in those zoning proposals. So I would definitely invite you, your support and input in that process at the City Council Ordinance Committee.
Next week.
So
Yeah, next week,
The
next
18th?
Thursday.
Is R5 and R10, like you can have 5 units, 10 units, this is limiting the number of units in particular.
Well,
It's set
it's-
to 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, 10,000 square foot minimum lot
Lots,
size. Yeah.
but the lower the number, the higher the density.
You said the lower the number, the higher. Okay.
Yeah, R5 has a higher density than
Yeah,
R10.
smaller, 5,000 square foot lots rather than.
Chaim is no expert on all of the,
No, you know, it's-
Well, I'll email you a copy of that zoning report because it really
Oh, no,
gets
I'd like
into
to
the
see it 'cause-
nitty gritty of all of that. And
Because in
that's, like, very good.
1996, when we changed,
Send it to everybody on the.
when we
Yeah.
changed the form of city government, there was also a big zoning change. And one of the things in that zoning change was the maximum number of units in a building could be 6. That was in response to the building, one building my brother and I built. We built the building on Main Street at 24 units. So that building, I got that changed later on with Stuart Beckley's help. But those are the things that, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. and Rome didn't fall apart in a day.
Yeah, now that cap is 18 and is one of the reasons why like the Sierra Vista project had to have 9
Right.
18
I
unit
fought for
buildings
that, I
rather
fought for
than-
that 18.
Yeah, but now we're trying to recommend it
Lift it
lifted
Yeah.
completely because it doesn't
It's arbitrary.
yeah, it's arbitrary and doesn't really make sense, and restricts creative development on lots that would otherwise could be conserved in creative ways. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I'll definitely share that with the group, because there's a lot of good stuff that will need advocacy in front of planning board and ordinance committee and all of that. So getting back to the conversation in terms of the feasibility of a home rule petition passing. So I definitely hear that question, and that was sort of a thought that I had before any of this work really begun of setting up this committee and trying to make this happen, was like, what is the point of doing this if we know it's just gonna get killed in committee? And after thinking about it, my first thought was, well, we have a bill before the state legislature that is trying to lift the preemption. So if that preemption was lifted, we would already be in the process of developing a locally tailored policy and could be one of the first in the states to successfully pass a local ordinance. And that would be really cool. And I think that if we're on that timeline, we would be in a really good position. I also think that it increases the local understanding of this policy. I think that the process of doing the research, understanding our housing market more deeply and understanding the needs and the specific challenges that our developers, landlords, tenants are all facing, I think that that will lead to a better policy process in all parts of our city government related to housing, not just this rent stabilization specific thing. And I think that this committee, the dual purpose of this committee really exemplifies that possibility. I also think that the way that we built this committee is really set up to build that broad stakeholder buy-in and ensuring that we have developers and landlords and tenants and property owners all here and sharing their concerns. And outside of this group, I would hope that we would all advocate for more of those stakeholders to come in and participate in these listening sessions, and committee meetings, and so forth. So I definitely think that building that buy-in around this policy and understanding that it's not a tenants versus developers or tenants versus landlords, it's coming together to determine what's fair in a market. How can we set fair guardrails to make sure that, landlords are able to continue maintaining their properties, but we're not displacing people, raising rents 50% all at once, XYZ, all the bad things that is happening to our community now. And then I also think the last thing, like was mentioned, is it increases pressure on the state to address housing affordability. As I mentioned, there's the bill, there's the ballot initiative, there's the multiple home rule petition requests in 2019, in 2018, in 2022. So I think that this would be the next in a line of that really important work. And yeah, I think that the people involved in this work are also eager to help us move that forward. So all that being said, next steps. Do we want to continue that conversation in response to that? Or I mean, I think that it sort of gets into this whole like what we think our next steps are and breaking down into subcommittees. I mentioned that sort of dual purpose. So I did my own brainstorming on the different tasks that I could imagine these two subcommittees taking on. So I think the rent control subcommittee would, first start by really digging in and learning about rent control policy and, potentially diving deeper into the data that we could get our hands on that's higher quality than just the census, looking and potentially drafting a policy memo to both present to this group and also city council at large, just to reiterate like, hey, you commissioned this group, we did the research, we found comparable examples and case studies, and we're putting it all in this 2-page thing for everyone to read, potentially get out in the press. I'm waving at Sam. And all that. And I think that sets us up for that next home rule petition process of organizing those meetings, lining up the stakeholders, making sure that we're getting effective and legitimate public buy-in, and then drafting the policy. And then I think the policy review subcommittee, which would be working sort of in parallel and collaboratively with this group, with the other group and everyone in the committee, but also I think it would make sense to work together with the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership on some things. I think supporting some of the zoning stuff would be a good use of some of that group's energy as well. But reviewing current city policies affecting tenants, exploring the current tools that the city has through the Department of Health, through code enforcement, researching initiatives in other communities like community land trusts, co-op housing, expanding public housing options, like what tools we already have. And these are sort of my other presentation research ideas for things that we could pursue in the future in terms of investigating, deep diving, history background on rent control policy in Massachusetts could be interesting. Like I mentioned, a detailed analysis of our rental market using better data and digging into the assessor's records. We could do an inventory of the biggest landlords in Easthampton, how much property they own, what we could estimate the rents that they're getting. There's a lot that we could dig in there. And then I also think a really important part of this would be getting a guest presentation or a Q&A from someone who was part of this process in Boston, which I've already started the process of getting that ball rolling. So yeah, that's all I have other than setting the next group meeting.
That's awesome.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much,
No,
Kyle.
thanks so much, really.
Great.
That's great.
Big overview, and we can go in the folders.
Yeah, all the information.
Are
yeah.
tidy.
There is a lot of info on there. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
we looked at a couple for examples.
Yeah, and I like sort of promised you guys last time that it would be like a 15-20 minute thing, and I went 40 minutes, so apologies.
Oh, yeah, but we had questions.
Yeah, we had a couple of good discussions, so that's
Good information.
Mhm. I have a question about the subcommittees.
Yeah, can you go back to that
Yeah,
slide?
if you don't mind.
That's about us.
So, and this is more just like almost theoretical, but as I was looking at this, and I've been thinking about this since our last meeting too, and I don't know exactly where I land on this personally, but I just want to throw it out there to all of you. So I'm actually even wondering, like, do we need to split into subcommittees, or is the kind of items that you've like outlined here just things that like one or two, max three people we should all just be working on? Do you know what I mean? Because I'm wondering if the subcommittee split out is confusing / complicated for folks. And I don't have any strong feelings either way, but just
Can I piggyback on something today? So like instead of subcommittees, like, oh, here's a task. that-
Like
here's
Carolyn
two
would be
tasks
like-
we need
you'd
to
be
do
like-
by the next meeting and like give tasks
Yeah.
instead of a set committee.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure how people feel or like what the best approach is, but I was just thinking, especially after our last committee, and I know we've been just like organizing and just kind of getting things off the ground, and this presentation has been hugely helpful for that as well, but just wondering what other people think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the sort of revisiting interest in subcommittees has a sort of proverbial question mark. Like, I don't know if that's the most useful way to organize this group moving forward, but
Well, based on the, this is our third meeting?
yes.
It seems to me that we should all work on the first committee as listed. And I think that the policy review committee, I think some of that work has been compiled by you already. And I know it's more work needs to be done, but I think that can be, as we generate questions, we can look into that stuff. I wasn't a big fan of having two separate subcommittees.
Mhm.
It's just, herding cats sometimes, it's just a matter of, but that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just note that I think the couple of benefits to breaking out into subcommittees is that it allows us to be a little bit more nimble. Like, we won't have to do, if it's not a quorum of the members of this group, we can like just 3 people and work on something, having a working meeting that's a little bit less formal. But I also think that it doesn't, I don't know.
Maybe the second committee there breaks off once we have more information from the first, right? So there's a few things that we can work on collectively of like case studies, what's the research out there? What are the policies? And we can kind of like divide those things up. And then as we have that information, it kind of narrows the focus of some of those other pieces. And then that group breaks off and says, okay, we're going to take this information and we're going to start this, while the other group continues to kind of do some, and then it's just kind of a more synergistic kind of relationship where we're kind of moving and flowing between one and the other as we have enough data, enough information to be able to say, okay, we're going to create this now. Right, so.
Yeah, because I was thinking like it would be a little bit like a little less formal, like not abandoning this, but sort of like saying, if we need to go to this structure in the future, we can. Because I agree with you. Like I think we want to have the ability to like have working groups, but I'm thinking that I wonder like if some of the stuff should just be happening all together. And then, you know, like maybe in what it might be like March or whatever, we'll say, okay, now we're ready to like dig into whatever. Like
Yeah, a policy memo,
yeah.
working group.
And then it'll be like,
yeah.
okay, like Carolyn and I are gonna go off and do that, and then we'll come back.
Come
you know.
back.
So I just, because I was
Don't take
feeling
the
like,
months.
I wonder if by splitting out too early, it almost hinders us because we're still all sort of like really digging into this stuff and getting up to speed. But again, like I'm totally not opposed if we decide we want to do formal subcommittees right now. But I really like the idea, just kind of pick up one piece here. I really like the idea of the public listening sessions because I think that's something we could, as a committee, fully like get going pretty quickly, right? And that might be a good way to sort of also signal to the city and the different stakeholder groups that we're doing this, because I think people want to see movement, and we had a lot of fanfare when this initially came before city council, and now that we're getting into it, this could be a good way for people just to know, hey, like we're not just talking to renters, but we're not just talking to landlords, we're actually doing things in different spaces. So that was just one thought. Yeah.
Well, along that, do you think it's feasible to create at the moment, loose timeline? So like, I just don't want to date, February 15th, the first two items are kind of completed. March 15th, we're gonna have a listening session. I mean, there's nothing like a deadline.
I'm with you.
You know, and those are, I just threw it out for example, you know, but, you know, you two are gonna be busy with city council as well. And, you know, you have to think about that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think.
We're gonna be busy, what?
And volunteer committees always take way longer to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that they're going
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
And you're speaking from experience.
And yeah, I am speaking from experience.
A piece of what you were saying though, I think combining it all, like it will take longer than we think. But I wonder if we make an external report a little sooner about that we are having these listening sessions with all the different groups. Perhaps it could go into the paper at some point in the near future. Just to kind of lay out the vision, so even though we're still getting organized and we're not gonna do anything till, like you say, I'm picking a date, March 15th, people can know that that's where we're headed.
Do
Yeah,
we
getting
have
a lot
like
of
a,
shout-outs,
do we have a, like, we want to be done with this in a year kind of timeline? Like, do we have?
I don't remember us setting a deadline.
Yeah, I don't think there's a specific deadline.
Okay, well, let's just take as long as it takes.
I mean,
Well,
mean,
because
but I mean,
otherwise
we have
it
to.
will take.
Well, I'm being sarcastic.
I think the other thing I wanted to mention really quickly, just kind of go off of what you were saying, Caroline, is especially as a city council committee, the chair and really any representative has the right to request to be added to an agenda item on council's agenda, so that like Chaim could go into January or even the next meeting in December to give a report on what we're doing. So we could be advertising or sharing out. And I know that not everyone listens to city council meetings, but there's a small but mighty contingent who do in the city. So that's another good way to sort of like showcase that we are active in doing things. And honestly, like very few committees take advantage of that opportunity. So that would be a great way to highlight that we're actively doing stuff. And I know that especially around housing and renting and all that, like a lot of those folks are really plugged into what we're talking about at city council level. So.
Are we able to avail ourselves to the planning department? Like when I was on EDIC, that was a division of the planning department. And so the planner was, you know, very cooperative in, doing some legwork. I noticed that city councils don't always,
Yeah.
and are we able to, like, is the planning department gonna be part of this, or are they just gonna wait for our report?
I'm not sure about planning department staffing, but
We could invite
Because,
them.
in all
I mean, I'm
honesty,
sure they would
Yeah.
be
one reason why
amicable.
we're in this mess is the planning department. No, it's even like, so I was a chairperson.
Past planning department.
No, all planning departments, no, it's
No,
because
I get you.
like even like the zoning, Stuart, not so much, but Jessica and Jeff fought me tooth and nail on zoning amendments. Oh, we can't do that because we have to look at the whole zoning book. In order to look at the whole zoning book, we have to get a master plan, and we need a grant for that. The EDIC, we proposed two different zoning for downtown zoning. We couldn't even get it out of, and so I guess what I'm
My
trying to.
response to that was just, okay, I'm just gonna do it anyway.
Well, right, right.
Well, I
Well,
mean, we heard the same thing, the
No, but
same
what I'm
exact thing,
saying
like,
is-
oh,
but
but
see-
you have to do the whole thing,
And
and
we were like, okay, challenge accepted.
No, but I understand the dynamics in town of, mayor's authority, the city council's authority or lack of. But the planning department, I think, needs to be pushed a little bit
Mhm.
so that we can do this in a timely fashion. The planning board isn't so much, it's the planners, but planners, I'm being hard on them, but I understand the dilemma. They're chasing grants, they're chasing the fire of the day. I understand all that, and staffing, and we were out a planner for a while. But in general, the planning profession has dropped the ball on housing in general. It really has. And,
I think we should extend, I don't want to call it an olive branch necessarily, but I think we should extend an offer of collaborative partnership with our planning department because we do have a new planner. And I think that, to your point, we want to be collaborative with the different pieces, especially in the city government, that we're going to need in order to get buy-in and support for what we're going to be proposing ultimately, whatever that ends up looking like. So, I mean, I think that it doesn't have to be like a full-fledged presentation, but I certainly think we can invite Allison or one of her staff members to come and maybe meet or listen in to what we're talking about, because I agree. I think it's important to get that,
Yeah.
Make sure we're not just working in isolation, and I think that's part of what this committee is supposed to be doing, is to be reaching out to the different people who should be part of this conversation. So.
And I think I'm not in any way defending or anything like that, right? I think there's multiple things and multiple groups that are in conversation right now in the city trying to advocate for their piece of whatever it is
Oh,
they're
certainly.
trying to talk about.
sure.
And so I think all of that is kind of landing with the planning department right now, and
Oh, yeah,
they're trying to
they're the
like,
catch-all.
right, they're
The
trying to
drum tour.
accommodate a lot of different interests, and so how do we also work with them and those various groups, right, to be able to make sure that we're kind of like all coming along together, because otherwise somebody's gonna get pushed aside or somebody's issues, and so how do we focus on working collaboratively with a number of different groups to be able to kind of like focus on those things. And I think the more we can try to be supportive of the planning department in that process, because I think they're getting it from a number of different constituent groups right now.
Well, and capacity is really important, right? So when we think about, like, let's pretend we actually get it passed, right? And this was on one of your slides. Who's administering it? Right, so we will need feedback from the planning department and other departments, because how do we envision we would actually administer it? And what resources will we need to do that? So will we need to hire somebody? Does the planning department have existing capacity to do that? Probably not. So I think we will have to bring them in. We want them, I would think we would want the planning department to be excited about this idea, because if ultimately the administration of it resides in the planning department, we want them to
Well, certainly, because,
be interested in being part of the project.
like in Easthampton is a city. So by Mass State law, we have to have a building commissioner, not a building inspector. We have a building commissioner now. But a building commissioner is supposed to have building inspectors underneath the building commissioner. We have never been able to do that. And, the building commissioner is the chief zoning enforcement officer.
Mhm.
So I imagine this is not gonna be a zoning ordinance, but if you made it a zoning ordinance, that's where it would fall right there. And I know you'd see a lot of resistance right away because of capacity, in fairness. But the same arguments apply to a new board or whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Kevin, we're just making sure you're still there and
Yeah, I am still here. Yeah, thank you. It's always a little awkward to be remote, but I am listening. I do have one quick question, not to change the topic, but it aligns with kind of what Dave is talking about. But did I catch, Kyle, did you say that the city council has a subcommittee working on zoning changes now, or did I misunderstand that?
yeah, so the end of last year, at the end of 2024, the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership delivered a suite of zoning recommendations, which involved a lot of, reduction in lot size minimums and allowing duplexes by right in all residential zones, a few other things. And that is currently before the City Council Ordinance Subcommittee. And we're in the process of getting those recommendations, going through them and deliberating on them, and then moving them forward to a joint hearing with the planning board and city council.
Is it possible? I'm sure we can do our own investigation, but is it possible to upload and share that document as well, that draft?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It would seem, just given what we're doing, it would be very important to either look at it or weigh in on it or support it, or just give, the two go hand in hand, is obviously the rent issue and the number of units. So it'd be great to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Will do.
And you said that's happening next week, the 18th, in case anyone wants to join
Next
that.
meeting, yeah.
6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. in this room. Yep.
So speaking of things taking a long time, it's been a year.
Yeah.
Things take a lot, it does take a long time.
Which is fine. It just, we knew it was gonna take a long time, but
Some of it
it
is
takes a long time.
change in leadership, right? So then we had to get people up to speed, and then being responsive to the community in terms of people that they would like the committee to talk to. And so extensive invitations of being able to make those connections, right? And so, but I think that, those efforts have been made, and now it's like, okay, well, we've waited, and now we're gonna come back and continue our process.
My last comment on the timeline related to this, because I do love a deadline, I work better with a deadline, is we might want to look at what's the legislative schedule. So when would we have to file something? And is it January? Because obviously that would be too soon, but then is it January? For some reason, I think it's every 2 years. So then is it January 2028?
Yeah.
So that might help us back into when we think we need to be done, is to be able to file it.
Oh, that's a really good point.
no, that'd be good
The next
because
filing would be 27, I think.
Is it 27?
I think so, because they're in their
2
1
year?
year,
Okay.
1 year of this.
Yeah, 27 will be the next.
Yeah.
All right, so that's 20, so that would be
no, that's good to know because
ambitious and good, right? It would give us
Yeah,
a
because you compare that to, so now, with Easthampton's government, with off-year elections, basically we have a good, between now and April, May, you have a good run of getting work done. The budget gets to be a distraction. Then in the summer, things kind of slow down. You just have, it is what it is. You just have to be aware of that. And then so that August you come back,
Ready to go.
well, maybe, I don't mean you have to take a hiatus, but in August you hit it hard again.
Yeah.
So that you can make that January deadline.
And I will say this with the caveat that the Boston people had staff capacity that were working on actually drafting this legislation and everything, but they did it from March and then had a policy submitted the following or had a policy presented the following January, and then it was approved the following March. So, I mean, it's not impossible for us to do it in a year or and change.
I'm wondering, because obviously we need to find out some of this information. And then I know we'll talk about our next meeting in January, but maybe because I also love a deadline, I also love some homework. And so maybe some homework could be, we all really make sure that we read through the Boston packet essentially. because I also love like not recreating the wheel, because if we can build off of work that staffers that have been committed to this, have already done a lot of that work for us, then I don't think we need or we should have to like recreate that for ourselves. Obviously, we have to make sure it makes sense for Easthampton, but for some of that stuff around like just the pieces that are in place, like I know for me, that's gonna be something I wanna do for the next meeting maybe, is to just really get fully up to speed on what the Boston policy looked like. So I'm more informed around that.
That makes sense. And I think based on what everyone was saying, I think it might make sense to at least take like the top 2 bullets from the rent control subcommittee and just like put it ahead of even talking about splitting into subcommittees, or like we can just sort of start by the process of researching and learning about rent control policy, the case studies, the empirical research, the getting a representative from Boston here to give us their experience. Then we can talk about some sort of report that we want to put together about what we want to work on moving forward. That's the home rule petition. And then maybe we could also outline some of those other policy review steps that we want to take. Then we can present that and then move forward with organizing ourselves, as that makes sense. But I think it sounds like everyone in this group wants to do a little bit more of that higher level and deep dive exploration of all of the stuff that we've talked about first before really splitting up. All right. And then I also want to just mention, because I think Felicia and Carolyn, you mentioned wanting to start with the public listening sessions immediately. And I definitely agree with wanting to make sure people feel like they can come and give their public speak. The one reservation I have about doing that so soon is just I as a researcher and someone who does like some qualitative work, like I think it's important that we set the stage for those sessions to be a qualitative data collection venue.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we want to make sure that we're well prepared and that we're like have the right questions to ask and have a presentation set up to really make sure we're collecting the best data. And I think that is different than getting like public input and like having tenants come and speak at our meeting or having,
Yeah, I'm totally down to
Yeah, that makes sense. And can we see Boston's guidelines for how they did the listening sessions that we may be able to
yeah.
Get their
use
questions.
some of their
And like,
work?
and to your point with like just the general timeline, like maybe this summer is a good time for us to aim loosely at the moment for maybe starting some of that work. And I was even thinking too, because I know like one of our charges for this committee is to think about like how we can support renters right now in Easthampton. And I know like, for example, one of the things I've been thinking I need to start doing is I personally want to go and like attend a couple of those Thursday renter union meetings that are starting to happen, and just, you know, maybe do some of that more like individual legwork. But I totally agree that we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We also want to I think my point was like, we want to make sure that people know we're doing stuff and that we're not just like letting this go into like a black abyss, you know, where it's going to just wither away. So.
There's a rally tomorrow at 2 p.m. also on Union Street, in the parking lot there.
Right in front of Family Dollar.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're delivering letters to the owners of the Pine Valley Realty.
Yeah.
Well, that's where their office is, I see.
All right, so I think that for our January meeting, I will do my best to try to get, depending on when in January we decide we want to do it, to get someone from Boston to come speak initially. If I can't do that, I will reach out to double check if anyone has any other agenda items, but I can definitely start compiling some case study ideas, some potential research. You know, I can do mini annotated bibliography of some of the policy papers that I've already pulled together and do just a quick rundown of some of that stuff, and we can decide during that meeting how we want to split that up and give people homework. And but yeah, I feel like that makes sense as just the next step. And I feel like in the new year, we'll all sort of be coming at this with fresh eyes. Be like, what did we talk about in December? So yeah, I guess I will put out a request for a suggestion for a date.
Well, selfishly, January 13th, just to start it off,
Okay,
but you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
and we're doing fine with the Tuesday nights, so
I love January 13th. Yeah, that works for me.
6 p.m.
yeah, January 13th at 6 p.m.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. How about you, Kevin? Does that make sense for you?
That does not, but don't change it on my account. Unfortunately, I won't be in town that day. Either the weekend before or the Tuesday before or after is fine, but again, certainly don't change everything for me.
Well, I
I mean,
mean,
is there another
we-
time that
Are we
we can't
gonna,
do any other time?
shall we set like a
Like a
once
regular
a,
cadence?
once a month
Regular meeting?
whether we
Like the
have
second
something
Tuesday?
the
else?
second, yeah.
Second Tuesday.
Would help us coordinate with other things, right?
You have other things?
Priority?
We're literally, there's another meeting, but it got canceled anyway, because people were sick.
I mean, I could do the 20th or the 6th also if we want to make it available to Kevin.
Whatever, I'm in Tennessee during the winter. I come back once a month. That's why I selfishly picked the 13th. But
Gotcha.
Oh, that's
I can attend remotely too. I mean, it's whatever is more convenient for a majority of the community is a better idea.
Yeah, I can do the 6th or the 20th also, but if you have the option of being remote and you're okay with that.
I am, oh yeah, because I'm gonna have to be. We can't work this around me.
You're like, then it'll really take a long time.
I would prefer the 6th. I just feel like we're earlier going and like,
The third Tuesday of every month, I have a conflict.
So if we pick the 6th, it would be the first Tuesday of every month.
What
or
about the
13th.
27th? Oh, sorry.
ESB picked the last. Oh, no.
I just feel like we miss a month
But we can just ask them to
personally.
switch, but.
Do we wanna
Fourth was the
just-
standard one.
For now, keep the 13th, even though Kevin, you can't be there, and then you can catch up via recording.
I can do
Or-
anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm available any of the Tuesdays, so I don't care, but
If everybody's available, do you want to do the 6th?
And then we would go forward meeting the first Tuesday of the month.
That's fine. I could do the 6th.
That would coordinate.
I'll just be remote, that's all.
Yeah.
Would you have to be remote every time or just in the winter?
Yeah, until April.
are you available on the 6th, Kevin?
Yep, that works for me.
All right. I will request this room if we can get it. I like the chairs in here way better than the basement.
The basement is a whole different experience.
Brings me back to like elementary school with the like
We could
weird.
use those chairs up there. It's even worse.
All right, so January 6th, I will reach out about agenda items and update you guys on anything changing with potential guest. But otherwise, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you, everyone.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.